Peter Newman joins me now from Washington. He's the director of the International Center for the Study of Radicalization. Peter Newman, thanks for being with us. So you believe this is authentic, that it shows Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi?
Yeah, and I think so for two reasons. First of all, the guy in the mosque looks very much like the pictures that we've seen of al-Baghdadi. And secondly, it was released by ISIS itself, and they would be taking a huge risk releasing a video that then turns out to be fraudulent. Their media and marketing operation has been really, really professional, and it would be really stupid of them to do that.
But you don't ever see him interacting with anyone. I mean, one of the questions that people had when the video first surfaced was, what if this is him in one location and then there are general shots of people praying in that mosque? I mean, how do we know that he interacted with anyone there on that day?
Well, we don't. And so there will be more confirmation that is needed. But all the circumstances actually make sense. A week ago, or over a week ago, the caliphate was being declared. And it was only a question of time for the caliph to make some kind of announcement. You cannot have a caliphate without a caliph, with an invisible caliph. So we were always going to hear from him at some point. And this seems to be the right setting for that sort of thing.
What did you make of his demeanor, of how he delivered the sermon? I mean, to me, he came across actually oddly uncharismatic.
He is not known to be very charismatic. He is known to be a fighter and to be a scholar. I think this served two purposes. The first was to basically introduce him to the world and to say there is a caliph now, there is someone who owes the legitimacy and owes the allegiance of every jihadist across the world. The second is a statement of great confidence. It is basically saying to people around the world, we're here to stay. We're confident that we can hold this territory, we can have this state, we can expand this state. And in a way, the speech that he gave was more like a president almost. It was at times oddly magnanimous. He was asking people for advice. He was saying, if I make mistakes, please correct me. He's rebranding himself, no more the terrorist leader, now the leader of the world's Muslims, or as which he sees himself.
Well, so he's rebranding himself. It's a marketing effort. It's still a group that beheads, that crucifies, that shoots people in the head, that executes soldiers without any kind of mercy whatsoever. So they are an absolutely vicious terrorist organization. Yet here you have this man in his black robe, in his turban, delivering a sermon. And then one of the things that got people talking, which is a detail, but in a way, I guess details are interesting to people. There he is. He lifts his arm up and you see this giant metallic watch. And then people said he's wearing a Rolex, he's wearing an Omega or whatever watch. I mean, what do you make of the fact that people were even discussing this?
Well, I don't know the story behind that. It seems to be an expensive watch, and a lot of people on Twitter and elsewhere have been commenting on this to the point where ISIS supporter got actually pretty annoyed and were saying, you know, we have the new caliphate and all you talk about is this stupid watch on his hand. But in a sense, it's undermined him already to some extent because that's all that people are talking about. He's not known to be a flashy person or a charismatic person or someone who's particularly interested in expensive watches. But there you had him with an expensive watch, and that has dominated the social media conversation.
Well, there's one other shot that kind of I found interesting was there he was after leading the sermon, he prayed on the same level, apparently, as some of the worshipers there. But the faces of all the men behind him were blurred, even though every other shot showed faces quite clearly of everyone else. Now, what should we make of that? Does this mean, are these his lieutenants? Why would they blur the faces? That kind of thing.
Well, obviously, I mean, they blurred the faces because they do not want the identity of these people to be known. Baghdadi himself has been extremely secretive over the past few years, and he thinks it served him well. Now there was no other way other than to come out. You cannot have an invisible caliph. But there are, of course, a lot of other people in his organization who, for operational reasons, do not want to show their faces. And I guess those people were present during that particular service.
All right. And lastly, I mean, we see Baghdadi here compared to these other terrorist leaders, Osama bin Laden, Zawahiri. They never led sermons in mosques. They were in caves, you know, or with a nondescript background. So, I mean, What does this tell you? Does this tell you that truly they feel so confident that they can do this in Mosul, this big, big city in Iraq, without any fear that they might be targeted?
That is one point. The other point is, of course, that Osama bin Laden never claimed to be the caliph. He always claimed to be a fighter. He said, someone else is going to be the caliph. I'm doing the fighting. Someone else is going to take over. If you're the caliph, you have to be not only a military leader, you also have to be a religious leader. And that was certainly one of the purposes of this leading the prayer.